may have some issues in our country right now, but this is still an amazing place. It's up to all of us to make sure it stays an amazing place.
Welcome to the Wimp to Warrior podcast, and boy, am I excited to have two very special friends today. As we are going into Memorial Day weekend, I couldn't think of two better people to talk about the significance of that day than Karen Vaughn, best-selling author of World Changer. Her son, Aaron Vaughn, was a world changer. Karen is a Gold Star mother, and her son, Aaron, gave his life in August of 2011. And Memorial Day means something very special to her. And Jay Redman, retired Navy SEAL, served this country for 21 years and a good friend of mine. And I would think that you two tell it from maybe two different perspectives, but welcome to the podcast, my friends.
Very happy to be here, especially with you, Jay.
Karen, likewise, you and I have shared many stages talking about this very thing. So I'm honored to be doing that today. Louise, thank you for having us.
Well, you know, a lot of people think of Memorial Day as a day. Well, that's a 3-day weekend. You know, it's a day. Some people might say Happy Memorial Day. That does bother me a bit. Even though I know, Karen, I've heard you say it is a day for people to enjoy the freedoms that those who have given their lives in the past 200 plus years, because of their sacrifice, they can have a picnic and they can enjoy their freedoms. But I do think it's a day to be reflective for Americans as we think about the ultimate sacrifice that was given by so many. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you, Karen. As a Gold Star mother, what does Memorial Day mean to you as an American and as a mother?
As you said in the beginning, Memorial Day took on a very different meaning for me after August 6, 2011. I had never honestly considered that it was anything but a good weekend for the family to get together and barbecue and swim and things like that. That's what we did. And as you said, that's what I hope people still do. The only thing that I would ask people to do during Memorial Day is take a minute and teach the next generation what the day means. Just take a moment of silence, of sovereign silence, and recognize what this day represents. And it represents over 1.3 million dead Americans who have given their life to protect our freedom. And before we go any further, I just want to say, it's pretty crazy for me, the relationship that I've built with Jay Redman over the past 12 years now, because Jay and I met each other but had no idea who each other were back in August of 2011. Jay actually organized the massive memorial for my son and his fallen brothers that took place in Norfolk, Virginia. And I didn't find that out till many years later when he and I were on a speaking tour together. And I found out that he was the one that put that together. But I can tell you that that it's just an intimate bond that happens when a brother of those who have given their lives takes care of the family members of those who have given their lives. And, I just appreciate and respect him so much on so many levels. But that's one of the things. If you could have seen that memorial service, you have no idea. I don't know how many shipmates were lining the streets, American flags. It was massive, and Jay put the whole thing together, which is just, as I've come to know him, doesn't surprise me at all. But it was beautiful, and it was a beautiful connection for us to find out we had.
Jay, as someone that is very special, and I did not know that, Karen. I didn't know what you just shared, so that I know that you and Jay traveled together. Spoke together on many platforms all across America. Jay is someone who has served in the military. What do you think is the most important thing for Americans to understand about Memorial Day?
I was one of the individuals that helped organize that memorial, so I don't want to take sole credit, but thank you, and it was a tremendous honor. It's interesting. Memorial Day, most people don't think about Memorial Day because we have so few Americans who have actually served in our military. Um, I think the total number I read somewhere, there's a little bit of a misnomer, but I think only we have it's about 1 to 2% who are actively serving, and it's about 11% across the population of the United States. So that means almost 90% of our nation has no connection to the military. And there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of things people don't understand about the military. There are things that people just flat out have wrong about the military. But I think the one most common thing that those of us that have been in it and that ties it to the foundations of America is sacrifice. Whether the ultimate sacrifice is somebody laid down their life, like Aaron did, Karen's son, and so many of my teammates. Um, but this country was founded on that. That's what so many people don't understand. And right now, there's this weird narrative going on in American society that America's a terrible place, and it was born out of terrible ideas and terrible things. And one, that's just not true. This country was built on the foundations of freedom and opportunity. And it was a group of individuals who said, we don't want to be overly taxed and we don't want, taxation without representation and all these different things that made them say, we're willing to stand up and believe. And it was the average everyday citizen across this country that stood up and said, I'm willing to become a part of our military. The very first Continental Army was comprised of average everyday citizens that were trained, and obviously, so many of them sacrificed for us to have our freedom. And that has carried on to this day. Um, American forces have fought on shores all around the world, not to be um, invaders or subjugators, but really so often to come to the aid of other nations. And as a matter of fact, so many people don't understand that after World War II, America came into that conflict and we were not the big presence on a global stage quite at that point. We were starting to emerge, but we had done a very good job of building an amazing military. When we stepped into World War II, we became the tipping point to come to the aid of all these European countries and countries in the Pacific to make a difference. And I was just reading about this in a book that so many nations in history, when they become the victor, which America really prevailed as the victor or one of the victors as the Allied forces, we could have said, well, guess what? We're going to rule this new world over. Japan, we're going to take you over. Germany, we're going to take you over. Um, and these different places that we fought against. And we didn't. We said, you know what? We want Japan. We want to see you successful. Germany, we want to see you successful. And we created the Bretton Woods Agreement, which basically said we will provide support to all these countries around the world, our military. And since that day, so many Americans have died supporting that, in support of not only the freedom of our country, but the freedom of the countries around the world. So that's frustrating me on Memorial Day that the average American doesn't understand that sacrifice that Karen's son and so many of my teammates have made for this country and others abroad.
So well said, Jason. I think you nailed it. So many people don't have a personal connection to someone who's in the military. Less than 0.5 of 1% are currently serving in the military, and even less than that in combat. And if you compare that to World War II, almost 10% of Americans were serving in World War II of the population. So there's a gap. There is a military civilian divide. And we go around the country, Karen, you and I, now Jay, you've joined us on a lot of these events that we do, trying to bridge that military civilian divide, to bring awareness to the average American. I hope this podcast does that. And I think for someone who hasn't had anyone that served, or someone that doesn't know someone who has given their life, it's a little more difficult to truly understand. Karen, you talked about before you actually, even when Aaron was serving, Karen, would you say when Aaron was a Navy SEAL for 10 years, but even before he passed, you had not recognized the full significance of Memorial Day?
No, no, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, on Mother's Day in May of 2011, just before he died, 3 months later, he gifted me with a magnetic sticker for my car that had a blue star on it. And I had to call him and ask him what it was, because I had never even heard of blue and gold stars. I didn't know what that was. And when he explained it to me, I was like, wow. And for those of you listening who don't know, a blue star means that you have somebody actively serving in the United States military. And it's an emblem to show the rest of the world and just remind the rest of the world that, hey, there's people out there fighting for us right now, people out there putting their lives on the line. And so I had only just learned what a blue star meant when I was presented with a gold star. And so, and for those of you who don't know what it means to be a Gold Star family member, that just means that you lost a loved one while serving this nation. And, Memorial Days before, like you said, and like I said earlier, I had always thought of them as something just to be celebrated, a good break from work, Monday off, that sort of thing. And I remember that first Memorial Day in 2012, and I literally was
It's okay, Karen.
too crippled to get out of bed that day. Because for the first time, it struck me that it was made for my son and people like him, and it was a day of remembrance. And so I did take it personal and got a little offended for a few years when people would say Happy Memorial Day because I'd be like, oh, there's not really not much happy about this, or have parades for veterans that day. Like we say all the time, Louise, every day for us is Veterans Day. Every single day of the year is a day to honor the veterans, but that's not what Memorial Day is for. Memorial Day is to remember the ones who didn't come home. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pain involved in watching America not really understand what Memorial Day means. But again, I can't point a finger because I didn't either until the cost of freedom smacks you in the face. You can't, we don't have the ability to comprehend things we don't comprehend, right? And that's why it's so important for people who have stories to share their stories. Because if I share my story about what August 6th was like for me in 2011, all of a sudden, everybody who's heard that story now has a comprehension of what it felt like to get a call that your son had died 7,000 miles away from you, and that his body was burned beyond recognition, and you were never going to see his flesh again, and that he was going to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and somehow you'd have to wrap your mind around the fact that it was really him when you couldn't see him, touch him, feel him, smell him, nothing. Then it becomes real. And the same thing with Jay Redman's story of survival and overcoming, and the powerful testimony that Jay has. I mean, everybody on this call can look right now at Jay's face and see the price that he's paid for your freedom. And Jay, when you share that story, it makes it tangible to people who have no other way of understanding. If a rocket scientist came to me and said, boy, you can't even imagine what it takes for us to put orbits in the air, I would be like, no, I can't. And I don't spend much time thinking about it because it's out of my realm. It's like you say all the time, Louise, electricity works, but I don't know how, and I don't care how. I just want to flip the switch, right?
That's right.
And so it's the job of those of us who are still here to make sure everybody else in this country understands the tremendous sacrifice that's been made on their behalf, and that we live lives that honor the sacrifice of Jay Redman and Karen Vaughn and all the other, over 1 million who have died for this country, not to mention the ones who came home mangled and forever changed, right? Brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress. A lot of sacrifice has been given for us to celebrate freedom in this nation. And Jay, I really loved how you said in nations abroad, America has always gone to the aid of other nations. That's who we are as a people. And I pray to God we never forget who we are.
So well said. Jay, you've lost a lot of friends on the battlefield.
Yeah, too many. As a matter of fact, so many that for a while I've had thoughts of how do I honor them. I actually recently started a new tattoo, and I've known so many guys that have been lost that I had to narrow the list. There's 30 names on my arm. And I had to narrow the list to only individuals who I personally had a direct contact or had directly worked with, I was direct friends with. I mean, the reality is, I will admit Aaron's name isn't on there because Aaron and we crossed paths in the locker room. I met him a few times, but I didn't really personally know him. And that was hard. That breaks my heart to know. But that's sad that I have to honor 30 guys who I personally knew that I was friends with, and hmm. um, um, my let me bring this back up. The there's a lot of sacrifice that has enabled our country, and I think right now that Memorial Day should be a day. I always tell people, try not to be sad. For those of us that have lost somebody, it's easy to be sad. Um, but at the flip side, what I try and tell the average American is, man, just take a few minutes on this day. Man, enjoy your barbecues, enjoy your time off. Because isn't it great that we live in a nation that does take a day to honor those who are fallen? But just take a few minutes and, man, go look up some amazing people. You know, the Navy SEAL Foundation website lists all the guys we've lost. All my friends are on there. American Veterans Center does an amazing job of honoring individuals who served in our great military. Take a few minutes and go watch a couple of those videos with your kids. Spend 30 minutes to say, these are the men and women who enabled us to be able to have this barbecue, to enabled us to have the freedom and opportunity to do what we want. You know, America may be struggling right now, but we still have freedom and opportunity. There's nothing stopping anyone from going after their hopes and dreams. You know, we can try and make up stories that, you know, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. But the problem with that narrative is there's tens of millions of Americans that have broke out of any demographic chain that you want to place on them. And that would not happen in a country that doesn't have the freedom and opportunity we have in the United States of America. And that never would have happened if it wasn't for our military members willing to sacrifice to preserve this freedom.
Amen. And well said. Well, I love your tattoo. Well, let me just say this. I have a love-hate relationship with it, Jason. I hate that there's so many names that you had to tattoo. I hate that. But what a way to honor their names. I will share, and I share this on stages everywhere I go, that I think it's important that if you do know someone, that you honor them in some way on that day. My husband's best friend, they were born on the same day. They were friends from the time they were 5 years old. And everyone knew what Dale was going to do. Dale was going to be in the military, and he said it. He said it when he was 8. He said it when he was 12. He said it was 14. He said it when he was 18. I'm going to fly airplanes. He knew what kind of plane he wanted to fly. Well, it ended up he tried to join the Air Force. They weren't going to let him fly, so he joined the Marines because they would let him fly. And then at the age of 33, with 4 children, 10 and under, he and 6 other Marines went into the North Sea, and their bodies were not recovered for 6 weeks. And I always remember Dale, and I graduated with Dale. We were all small community. I was friends with Dale too. He was just a good guy. He was like, my husband would try to talk him into doing bad stuff, and Dale just wouldn't do it, even though Doug did all he could to talk. And I always feel like on Memorial Day, it's a day to honor Dale's memory because I know Dale. I knew Dale. I know his children, and now I know his grandchildren. And that they know that their dad's name is remembered, not just by them in their family albums, but by the community and by, whomever I can share. And I think that, you said it well, Jason. Go look up somebody. If you don't know anyone who has fallen in war, what a blessing that you don't. My brother-in-law, married to my sister's brother, is still missing in action in Vietnam from 1967 or 68. So there's so many thousands, millions who have given their lives. And you said it, Karen, the number. And you know what I always think about it, Karen, is every one of those who gave their life had a mother and a father. And they had probably brothers and sisters. Some had wives and children, like Dale. Like many of your friends, Jason, they had families, they had connections that are still missing. And Karen, Christmas will never be the same because your son's not there. But for America, and I think that y'all have said it so well, the most important thing that the United States could do right now, and I think you've both articulated it, but I'm just going to ask you both to say it again. What's the most important thing you think that a person could do this weekend? What do you think? And you've already said it in some ways, so I'm just, as we're closing this out, and both of you are such well-known. You're both, Jason, New York Times bestselling author, The Trident. It's an amazing book, and I would encourage my listeners to read it. And then Overcome, I just finished it. Thanks, Jason, for making me realize all I need to overcome. Appreciate it, buddy. And Karen, your book, World Changer, about your son. Both of you are just, I appreciate your contribution to this podcast, and I hope that we can get the message out. But if there is one parting thought that you want to say to the listeners, uh, you can share it right now.
I think a great place to start this weekend, and I'll start by saying this, or on Memorial Day, is my favorite. There have been a lot of monuments erected in Aaron and his teammates' honor, a lot of them across the nation. My very favorite of all of them is here in our small town of Stuart, Florida, where they erected a monument showing him as a child, an image of him as a child, and an image of him in his full gear shortly before he died. And it has a little bio of him on it, but what it holds is it's a great big base with a gigantic American flag on it, and behind it is a water park. Every child who enters that water park has to walk by that monument and remember, if their parents take the time, or their coaches on the swim teams take the tickets, it's our massive pool in the community where swim teams have competitions. It's one of those gigantic Olympic pools, and then there's the water park. But everybody who walks by there, if they would just take the time to find a monument like that somewhere in their community and go find out about that person, look at that monument, just some reflection, because I say this all the time. And Louise, if I could the ring, do you mind if I tell my story that I say all the time?
Absolutely. Tell the ring.
This is a diamond that means a lot to me. It was given to me on my 25th wedding anniversary. I'm 42 years in now, and I tell people all the time, people don't do that much time for murder. I've done it for love. At 25 years, I got a big upgrade on my ring. I love this ring. It has tremendous value. I mean, it's a valuable ring monetarily. It's a really nice cut diamond, but it also has a tremendous amount of emotional attachment to me and my family. And one day when I die, I will make sure that one of my daughters gets this ring. I'll pass it to her. She'll know the story of this ring. She'll know that their dad gave this to their mom on their 25th wedding anniversary, when they committed to another 25 years plus together. They'll know that. They'll know that I wore it with great love and with great pride. One day when my daughter that I picked to get this
daughter.
ring,
Your
they better be
favorite
good to
daughter.
me. They'll pick my favorite daughter, let's be honest. I'll give her this ring. She'll make sure that it's passed on to the next generation. You know why? Because all of us across this country understand the value of a gemstone and emotional sentiment. We get that. We all get it. But just put it right on the gemstone. You across this nation have been given a gift that is so much greater than any rock that was ever dug out of the earth, and that's the gift of freedom. And I think that the reason we don't value and treasure and make sure that the story of freedom is passed from generation, the love and the passion and the attachment to freedom is passed generation after generation after generation, is because so few of us had to pay for it. We don't know what it cost. No one told us what it cost. So be the generation that tells the next generation what it cost. And that's how you can honor somebody on Memorial Day.
Well said, Karen. Well said.
Guys, if you look around the world, there are a lot of places that are struggling. Ukraine is in war. They're fighting for the freedom of their country against obviously a country who believes that they should fall under their rule. There are plenty of places in Africa that are struggling with civil war and tribal warlords. So many of the places that I fought, Afghanistan obviously taken back over by the Taliban. We may have some issues in our country right now, but this is still an amazing place. It's up to all of us to make sure it stays an amazing place. And I think, unfortunately, we have had freedom for a long time, which has made people start to take it for granted. They don't think anything of it. I often describe it as like breathing air. We never think about the air we breathe. You just breathe and it's there. And you never once think about, man, I'm so thankful I have this air to breathe that sustains my life. Well, freedom is like that. If I suddenly took away your air, very quickly you would figure out how much you needed air and how much you appreciated air. And I have to tell you that if we took away freedom, you would feel the same way. So I just hope that you'll think about that. All the political negativity that you read about, just take a step back and recognize that freedom and opportunity still exist. You can leave your house anytime you want. You can go to the store and hopefully it's there. I mean, granted, prices are higher right now, but you still have the ability to get out and do things. And all of that went back to day one of this country when there were average everyday citizens that said, I'm willing to fight for freedom. It continues to take today, guys. And I hope you'll understand that. I hope you will appreciate that. And you will teach your kids that so that, that can continue in this country. And Memorial Day is the day we recognize that sacrifice.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Karen. Um, this has been a true honor for me to have two of my friends sharing on this podcast, and I believe that it'll make a difference in someone's life. They will look at this day differently now. And we come together as America to honor those who have fallen. Thank you both. Thank you both very
Thanks,
much.
Louise. I'll see you
Thanks,
next week.
Louise.